We don't know.
Right?
We've got to come back in 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Unmuted.
Chair, we just need to publish that link first before, so that people know where the link is.
Thank you, Martin, for that. The sound is currently live, so I'm just going to mute microphones. Martin, we're ready to go live. Chair, the live feed is recommenced.
Thank you. Can I just make a comment that Councillor Munro's paused his iPad to this meeting? Oh,
Councillor Monroe is live in the meeting.
right. Thank you very much.
Chair, just
Are you
before you
going to-
continue, if I can just confirm for the public watching, whilst the live stream has not been working, the meeting was adjourned. I believe that we had concluded the lead signatories' presentations just before the live stream concluded. There were no questions from members. And now, Chair, if you're moving on to asking Grant Galloway to present his response, nothing has been missed from the live stream.
Right. Thank you for that. Grant, would you like to bring your response to call in, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On a lot of what I've heard, releasing the planning application, process, and building process, so a lot of the things that we're
Grant, I can't hear. I don't know. I can't hear.
None of us can hear.
Good. I don't mean good, but it's.
Shall I? Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can anybody else? No. So
I
can't hear
Right.
Grant either.
I'll start again then. So a lot
Apologies, Grant. May I suggest that you move slightly closer to your computer?
How close do you want to get?
Chair, I can't hear Galloway very clearly.
I can agree with you there. I can't either.
Grant, if I give you a phone number, could I suggest that you call in on the phone?
I would if I got a phone. I've put some headphones in. Can you hear me now?
I can.
I can.
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. All right, excellent. I don't think people want to hear from me by the sounds of it. So if you can all hear me, a lot of what I've heard is in relating to planning and the planning decision and moving forward with the site. All the ecology stuff will be carried out through that process. So I can't really comment on that, but what I can comment on is the process. So I'll go through the timeline of when things happened and the process that will follow. So the process has been running since 2017. The last request to purchase the land was received in June 2019. Now, this wasn't us going out looking for people to buy the land. This was a request from the developer, so that needs to be put straight for a start, because everything I've heard is that we've been pursuing people to buy this land, and that is not the case. Officers have a responsibility to deal with matters in a timely fashion. So the request for the proposed purchaser was presented to the Asset Management Group in August 2019. The group, which included representatives from all relevant factions of the council, including legal, finance, property services, considered the request and resolved not to present a report to executive for consideration, as the proposed purchaser would be unlikely to purchase the land unless they had gained planning permission. The proposed purchaser was written to, as Councillor Clough has said, to reiterate that fact. And if it gained planning permission, we'd reconsider it and we'd send that through to the executive for a decision. The proposed purchaser contacted the council again in February 2018. Sorry, on the 28th of February 2020. After gaining planning permission for the site, they asked for the council to progress the land sale, to which they were told that we would present the sale for consideration at the next available opportunity. This would normally mean the report would be presented to executive. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic meant that this was not possible. With meetings cancelled and with no indication of when the next meeting would take place. So I'll go back to the point that we need to make a decision in a timely fashion. The sale of the land was placed on issue 90 of the list of key decisions. Delegated powers to ensure the operation of the council could continue were used to enact the decision, which was subsequently sent to members, which has led to this review today. The delegated decision scheme is a fully transparent process, which is again is demonstrated by today's meeting. It has been suggested that the decision to sell the land has been made by a single person. While the decision is signed off by an officer, the delegation scheme does not allow one person to act in isolation. In this case, Asset Management Group and the majority of key members supported the sale. It is noted that ward members, Section 151 officer and monitoring officer were consulted and responded, indicating they had no issues. So through the process, the acquisition and disposal policy states it is important that each land disposal is treated on its own merits, and nothing in the policy will bind the council to a particular course of action in respect of land disposal. That said, the method of disposal is in line with the policy. The council's actions in disposing the land are subject to statutory provisions, in particular to the overriding duty of the council under Section 123 of the Local Government Act 1972 to obtain the best consideration that can be reasonably obtained for the disposal of land. It is the opinion of the council's RICS qualified valuer that the sale value agreed with the proposed purchaser meets the criteria set out in Section 123 of this Act. The council's Asset Management Group will consider and make recommendations concerning all council property land transactions prior to disposal. The Asset Management Group considered the sale in August 2019 and agreed to recommend to members if the proposed purchase was successful in gaining planning permission. The land was assessed as surplus as it met the criteria set out in the policy. It did not make any contribution to the delivery of the council services, strategic objectives, nor generates any income. It was surplus to the council's operational requirements. It was not used for service delivery. A site or part of a site is deemed to be underutilised if the income being generated from the site is below that could be achieved from an alternative use, disposing of the site and investing the income, or intensifying the use of the site. In this case, disposing of the site and investing the income. In all circumstances, the valuation of sites will be undertaken by the council's valuer. This was carried out in line with the policy as the valuation was not major nor complex. The council had no commercial interest in the site, and the site is not being considered for disposal at less than best consideration. The method of disposal is set out in the policy, and in this case, private sale, which is a sale of land negotiated with one or small number of purchasers. The land may or may not have been marketed as available for sale. The proposed purchaser approached the council, which is an important fact, to purchase the land. This is not an unusual thing to happen. This happens quite frequently across the district. So we have probably a dozen occasions of this in a year. The purchaser, and as long as it's in line with the RICS valuation and it's deemed to be market value, it's in line with the policy, which it is. As far back as the Blackpool Parish Council meeting minutes of 2009, in 2017, it was reported that land was owned by the council. So there was no issue with people knowing that. In this instance, it was well publicised through both the planning process and Blackpool Parish Council meeting minutes of the 18th of October 2019 that the land in question was owned by Boulder District Council and would be considered for sale if the proposed purchaser gained planning permission for the site. We have had one other offer from a resident of Park Avenue, which was £3,000. The council's valuer has valued the site at £240,500 in line with the rules of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors Global Standards of 2017. It is generally accepted that a valuation tolerance of plus or minus 15% is acceptable, which means that the acceptable valuation range for this site is between £205,000 and £276,000. The offer from the proposed purchaser sits in the middle of this valuation range and is therefore deemed an offer in line with market value, which is in line with the overriding duty of the council under section 123 of the Local Government Act 1972, which is to obtain best consideration that can be reasonably obtained for the disposal of land. When assessing the sale of land or buildings, we look at all available information. This can be planning responses, information from social media, policy, consultation of statutory officers, and gaining members' views. We reviewed all these sources and taken account of people's views and assessed these in line with the overall benefit to the district in selling the land at market value. In recent weeks, there have been claims that the site has been used for disabled parking for an event. The council have not been approached by any event organisers to use this area for such a purpose or any other purpose. It is normal practice for anyone wishing to use a piece of land is to ask the permission of the owner. If this happens, this happens to us multiple times a year on many sites across the district. This enables the council to assess the suitability of the site for the purpose the event organiser wants to use the site for, and to put in place a licence to occupy to ensure any liabilities are covered. This is for the benefit of both the organiser and the council. Had we been approached by the organiser, we probably would have refused on safety grounds. The site is uneven, covered in roots, with a risk of damage to vehicles and persons from falling branches. If it happened to be a windy day on the tight day of the event, that was a real risk to anybody using that site. Again, recently we had a few emails claiming that the site was public open space. The site has been visited and there were no signs that the site had been used by anyone. On the day of the visit, there was no one in the area. There were no worn paths or flattened grass. The site is fenced, although some of it was missing and the rails could be seen evident on the floor. Having reviewed the 67 planning objections, we cannot find any reference to people objecting because the area was a public open space or used by the public. So it's still the opinion of the officers that the area is woodland and not public open space. From what I have seen, the overall objective of the resistance to sell the land is to stop the housing development. At least one of the recent emails from resident of Park Avenue points out that Park Avenue is not the only route open to the developer to gain access to the development site. It's highly likely that whether or not the council agrees to sell the land, the site will be developed using an alternative access already in the control of the developer. It has been suggested that the sale is not in the social and economic interests of the district. Considering the benefit to the district, we looked at a number or many factors. So one, the current financial position of the council. The council is currently losing £250,000 a month due to COVID-19. And in the next few years, it has already been forecast the council will be in deficit due to government cuts. There is therefore an urgent need to ensure income is generated to protect essential services. That any sale is in line with market value. The sale of the site has been assessed as being at market value and market value compliant. The income from new homes bonus is considered. In addition, council tax generated from housing. Section 106 contributions and how these can be used in the vicinity, although not known at this point, will be a consideration that will be held by planning. And then social housing, we know that we've got around 150 people looking for housing and social housing in Glatwell, and this site will produce 10% in line with policy. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Grant. Do any members have any questions? Again, I remind members, please save comments until later on.
Bruce Watson has indicated he wishes to speak.
Right, thank you, Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. My name is James Watson, and I represent the people of Pinkston on board of the District Council. Thank you for your report, Mr. Galloway. I have 3 questions really for you, at the start. So I'll list these questions if that's all right with you, and then you can answer them in sequence. So in your report, you mentioned that there was an informal meeting of the executive on the 21st of April. On the assumption that you were there, then could you tell the committee who else was there in that informal meeting, please? My second question is, and I do note that you try to distinguish in your report that this isn't open space, but can I ask you, according to the disposal policies, to paragraph 11.2, then the procedure is that you should seek legal advice before deciding the method of disposal, which you've done. So therefore, may I ask, did you seek legal advice? And you may want to finesse that with basically on your interpretation of open space and housing land as well. And thirdly, and finally, I have been in correspondence with Mr. Hickin, who, as you know, is the head of paid service and a statutory officer. Basically, in his email to me, and I will quote it to you, he said this: although matters are being dealt with by delegation, these will, as they have always done, involve the relevant member of the executive in that decision-making process. It is simply incorrect to think that officers would make delegated decisions against the wishes of the leader, who is, of course, chair of the executive and other members of the executive. I would like what your view, is that your view too, Mr. Galloway? Those are my 3 questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Watson. So, first question, attendees from memory. I think just about every member of the executive were there bar 1. I think, I can't remember which one it was, 7 out of the 8 there. 3 directors were also in attendance. In relation to seeking advice, in my statement, I told you that it went to the asset management group in August 2018. I also told you that there were the relevant officers from legal, from property and estates. So yes, that advice was taken. The final one was executive, and whether it was the decision of the leader. It wasn't the decision of the leader. What we looked at throughout this process is, as I've said again in the whole of the introduction, that we looked at the consensus. We look at the consensus of what is right for this piece of land. We look at the objections from the parish councillors. So the majority of the parish councillors at Glatwell were against it, and I've recognised that in the statement that I gave. The majority of the other senior councillors was that it would be supported. So while it is a decision that I have had to make and sign off, it is through consultation. It is taken into account the objections of the Glatwell councillors, because the Glatwell councillors knew that this was coming up for sale. It's even in the Glatwell council minutes. So I don't quite agree with what the head of paid services says, because it's more rounded than it's actually put down in black and white.
And Councillor, can I ask a supplementary to those 2 questions?
Sarah, is that all right with you?
It's with you, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, Yes, you can ask a supplementary question then, please.
And so just to confirm, the meeting on the 21st of April was a physical meeting, and presumably it was at the Arc. Is that correct?
That's correct. So it was a physical meeting. There was social distancing protocols put in place so that everyone was spread out above 2 meters. The correct equipment was there for sanitizing. So,
Was this the only item on the agenda, or was there others?
I believe there was a number of items discussed. It was a while ago now, so I think there was items discussed in relation to recovery of the council and some of the future projects that we needed to move on. So no, not the only item.
But this was such an important decision to be made. It had to be made by a physical meeting of the executive during a lockdown.
I was an attendee of the meeting, invited, so it's not a question I can answer, unfortunately.
And secondly, the legal advice, because the timeline that you outlined with how you formed the decision and so forth, was that formal legal advice specifically addressed to the method of disposal?
So the process is, we've got an acquisition disposals policy, we've got an asset management plan and asset management strategy, and all those things point in one direction, and that is to the asset management group. And the reason that structure was set up in the first place was so that one officer wasn't put in a position where they had to make a decision on their own on any particular subject. So everything gets referred to the asset management group, where the relevant officers are in the room to make sure that the correct advice is given at the time. So I mentioned in my, I've not finished yet, I've mentioned in my statement at the beginning that this process has been going on since 2017. So it's not the first time it's been to asset management, it's been there several times. So I believe due process has been followed, due advice has been given, and due advice has been implemented.
But you recognise that the decision to dispose and the decision basically to adopt a method of disposal are two separate things.
The decision to dispose and the method of disposal is in line with the policy. So it's quite right and proper the way it's been done. So the policy clearly states that you can do a private sale with an individual as long as you get RICS valuation on the site. We've got a fully qualified RICS valuer within the council. In fact, he's not just a member of the RICS, he's a fellow. So he's a highly respected member of the RICS community. So yeah, I believe that we've taken the correct and appropriate action.
And of course, in his report is basically the alternative access highlighted as well, which is reflected in his valuation, has he not, basically? The alternative access that basically doesn't require access through Park Avenue, but through Blacksmith's Close, because basically he adjusted his valuation to take that into account, did he not?
But having read the valuation, yes, I believe it has. But as I say, I'm a chartered construction manager, not a chartered surveyor. So we have to take his advice and opinion on that matter.
Did you not feel basically that when you made the decision in early May that you were making your decision on an out-of-date report?
That was discussed. Out-of-date report, barely. But have you seen what's happened to the market in recent months? It's absolutely.
But that's the whole point about the report and that paragraph, that it's valid for 6 months.
Yeah. So I don't have any issue with the valuation as it stands at this moment in time. It is in line with the RICS valuation guidelines, and we know where the market's gone. So what happened with this report? Originally in 2017, we had a valuation. The valuation was slightly less than it was now by about £500. We've had another report done in 2019, bearing in mind we had a rise in market, but also rise in costs on construction. we've gone another 3 months into this process, and we've had a crash. So it's been well reported. The Nationwide were reporting last month another 1.7% drop in house prices. That has a negative effect on any valuation.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. And I take it that you disagree with the head of paid service on his interpretation that I just outlined on you. But thank you very much indeed for your comments and answers to my questions.
I don't disagree on the comments. Can I respond? I don't disagree.
Is that you, Grant?
It is.
Yeah, yes,
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with the head of paid service. What I do say is that there's a more rounded picture, not just one person's decision. It is a rounded picture, and that's the.
Chair, you have
Mr. Pointer, Mr. Galloway, I would point out
and Councillor
that,
Kirkham.
okay.
Chair, both Councillors Kirkham and Councillors Clough have indicated they would like to speak.
Right, can you bring them in, because I've had no indication that from this side. We're following each other.
Councillor Clough indicated that she wished to speak first.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. I noticed earlier you perhaps missed in my speech when I said I hadn't received early notification nor formal member consultation. Can you tell me when I had my early notification and formal member consultation? Because I have nothing that gives me any indication of that from February the 28th, 2020, when the purchaser came back to ask you. It may well have been that I objected at planning, but we are not discussing planning here. We are discussing the sale of the land. With regards to the use of the land for disabled parking, you might actually go back to speak to the former leader of the council, who came to many of those events, and I think it was discussed at meetings, at parish council meetings, and with the organisers, and they had full health and safety things in place. But that would be, you should really have gone back. So perhaps you might like to do that. But my questions really are, when you consulted with me, because I don't have any recollection. In fact, I know I haven't since February the 28th about this issue. Thank you.
Right. So we have had an email exchange, which you pointed out in your discussion. The policy and the word within the policy is about making sure that councillors are aware what the plan is for that site. So I don't think it's written down in many places that the members of Gladwell knew what was the intention with that site. So that's as much as I can tell you on that particular subject. When you talk about parking and you talk about the leader, the ex-leader of the council knowing about that, I've checked internally and we had no notification from anyone that wanted to use that site. Had we done, we would enter into dialogue. There may be somebody within the council that knows about it that I'm not aware of, but I'm not aware of that myself.
Thank you, Grant.
Can I come back on that, please? The exchanges that we had were actually back in October. I'm talking about since February the 28th.
Yeah. So the exchange in October was clear, saying that if the developer got planning permission, that we would move to get the decision on whether to sell the land. So it was clear at that point, if they got planning, and you knew when they got planning, that we'd present it to members for a decision.
Thank you, Grant. Joanne, have we any other speakers wanting to come in? I've got nothing up on my screen.
Chair, Councillor Tom Kirkham indicated he wished to speak.
Right. Can I bring you in, Tom, please? Tom Kirkham.
Thanks very much, Jen. Chair. My question's around timing and proportionality. So On the 21st of April, people over 70 were told not to leave their houses. People currently still shielding because of COVID, and people of working age were only allowed out for 1 hour a day to do exercise. As you've just stated, every member of the executive, bar one and 3 directors, all physically came over to Clown and met within that meeting to talk about the sale of this strip. Do you think that was a proportionate breach of the lockdown restrictions? And also, did anybody at the time think for a second that releasing this decision during the lockdown, what impact it would have on local residents within the community who are obviously restricted to their own houses and unable to meet and discuss the sale?
So, two questions.
Before you answer, Grant, can I come in? The first part of that question, I have to say, is not at all relevant to the call-in. Whether or not that meeting was held in breach or not in breach of the lockdown provisions is irrelevant to the call-in. The second part of it is one that Grant should answer.
That I do not believe was discussed at the meeting. Had this gone through the full process and the developer developed the site out, it's going to have to go for full planning permission anyway. So that site is not going to be going anywhere for the next 12, 18 months. So the COVID position would have been over by that point.
But there was no consideration done with respect to the impact this decision would have on local residents during this specific time, which is, you know, a generational event, and it's caused a lot of distress in the community without the sale.
Yeah, I can confirm that wasn't under consideration. It wasn't deemed as public open space. So no.
Okay, so no concern was given to the interests of the residents in terms of that current situation. Thank you.
Chair?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that.
Patricia Clough has indicated she'd like to speak.
Right, Tricia, would you like to come in? Oh, Councillor Clough, sorry, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just a small point, well, not a small point, it's quite a good point really, and it relates to what Councillor Kirkham just came in. Shouldn't the residents of the Localism Act 2011 have been consulted on this?
I don't believe so, no.
You don't believe so, but you don't know so.
According to our policy, there was no requirement to consult with local residents.
Perhaps we need to look at the 2011 Act again.
Sarah, did you want to come in on that?
I need to say the policy is where it is at the moment. Policies are reviewed from time to time, and obviously we look at relevant legislation.
Thank you.
Chair, Councillor James Watson has indicated he would like to speak.
Right, Councillor Watson, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor James Watson, Kingston Ward. So from that comment, Mr Galloway, basically on the declaration of surplus, which you said earlier was discussed at AMG, and basically the need to look at the council objectives, then I take from that that the council doesn't have an objective of its health and well-being of its residents. That's not one of the objectives of the council. Is that correct?
I don't think that. I think you're trying to twist. What I'm saying is that I've gone through the policy along with the other people in the asset management group, and we've looked at what the surplus requirements mean in relation to this particular site.
And I do remind you, Mr Galloway, that you are the decision maker. It's your decision that we are reviewing. And therefore, it's you at the end of the day that basically draws all this together, all the asset management group, whether it considered fully whether it was surplus or not, because you are the decision maker. I'm saying in the AMG that basically the definition of a surplus, that basically it says that if it doesn't contribute to the council's objectives, so one must take from that once you viewed it yourself as surplus, that basically the objectives of the council is not the health and well-being of its residents.
Is that a question?
Is that your view?
Was that a question or a statement? Is it?
I made it a question by asking you, is that your view?
Okay. No, my view is that the council have a whole regard for the people's health and well-being out in the district, and that's been demonstrated time and time again. What we're talking about is a strip of woodland, which we do not believe is public.
Chair, Councillor Tom Monroe has indicated he would like to speak.
Right, thank you. We'd like to bring him in.
Good morning, Councillor Tom Monroe, Whitwell Ward. It's a question to the director. If the recommendation of the Scrutiny Committee is to recommend that the responsible officer, being yourself, be required to go back and review the decision, presumably in consultation with the executive, what in your view is the possibility of reapproaching the planning applicant, the developer, in considering other alternative means of access to the site on which he has gained planning permission? I trust that that is an acceptable question, and if it's not, I'm sure the monitoring officer will intervene. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to have that conversation with the developer.
Chair, we have no further indications of wishing to ask questions.
Right, thank you. Right, carry on. Nicola, where do we get to next?
Chair, if I may, this concludes the presentations then, if we've got no further questions. So you can turn to opening this up for debate. If you can look at page 5 in your notes where it says this concludes the presentation.
Yes, I've got there. Yeah. Before we open this up for debate, I will ask the scrutiny officer just to recap the options opened to the committee. Now we have heard the evidence. Joanne, can I bring you in, please?
Thank you, Chair. So to remind members, we've heard from all 3 signatories to the call-in. You've heard a range of evidence in relation to the decision-making principles in terms of the proportionality of the decision, in relation to the links back to impact on community, consultation as part of the decision-making process, the links back to the policies that have been relied on as part of the decision-making process. Members will also be aware of the detail that's been given to them in terms of the valuation of the site and how that is in accordance with the RICS valuation principles. At this point, members need to consider the range of evidence that you've heard, the responses from all speakers. It's important that as part of your wider debate that you now have, that you decide, has the decision been made in line with the decision-making principles? And you can refer to the appendix, which was the original call-in notice for the call-in principle, the decision-making principles in which they feel there may have been a breach. What you are required to do at this stage is to come to a conclusion as to whether you feel the decision is in line with the decision-making principles. and should stand as it is now. If that's the case and you come to that conclusion, a member within the committee would need to raise a motion to that effect. If at the conclusion of your debate you feel that the decision is not in line with the decision-making principles and you do wish to refer back to Grant Galloway for further consideration, and that information that you've just heard there from his response to Councillor Tom Munro indicates how that may move forward, you can define a motion that states why you wish to refer that back to Grant Galloway, stating your reasons why the decision is in breach of the decision-making principles. And it's very clear that we must have a set of reasons as to why we're referring back to Grant at that stage. So if you'd like to move to a more open debate, Chair, you're at that point, and remind you that you must need a motion before we can move further. Once we have a motion, there'll be the opportunity for the lead signatory, Councillor Clough, and for Grant Galloway to have a right of reply once committees finish their debate. Grant will speak first if he wishes to have a right of reply, and Councillor Clough will speak second. I'll allow you to move forward to the main debates, Chair.
Thank you. So we now go to the recap, do we? Joanne?
Sorry, Chair. No, so as I've outlined, you've had a range of information within your package. You've also had a range of resident information. Some of that's been referred to within the meeting. A number of councillors have referred to the petition as well. At this stage, that isn't a formal petition to the authority in line with our petition scheme. We are aware of it. We are treating it in an informal capacity at this stage, as we have not had it formally submitted to the authority. So there has been an informal online petition in progress. We have also received a number of comments from local residents, which members have received as part of their paperwork, which you may wish to consider as part of this. So at this stage, it's an open debate between councillors for you to sum up and go over the comments that you've heard and draw a conclusion as to how you want to move forward with this decision. So you are either choosing to let the decision stand as it is, and it will be enacted following the close of this meeting, or you feel that you've received sufficient evidence to refer the decision back to the decision maker, the Director of Development. So it's now for an open debate by committee.
Right then, I'd like to open the debate and ask councillors who would like to speak, please.
The first member who's indicated they wish to speak is Councillor Tom Kirkham.
All right. Would you like to come in, Tom, and speak, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would like to send this back to the Director on the basis that the timing and proportionality of the decision is questionable, particularly considering the current pandemic. There's still ongoing issues around openness and transparency with respect to consultation of the local community, ourselves as councillors and parish council. And there's still issues around the elements of the disposals policy, which I'm not 100% clear on, particularly around desk studies into previous land use, justification of why the valuation was done as it was. I understand that the last time the valuer visited was 2017, and also I know that the buyer approached the council to buy the land, but that presumably doesn't stop the council from still opening it up to other bids. And obviously we've got a debate around surplus, and I would like to see consideration for clawback with respect to any future purchasing agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jim Clifton has indicated he'd like to speak.
Thank you. Jim, if you'd like to, Councillor Clifton, sorry, if you'd like to come in. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, I can, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm referring to the joint disposal acquisition policy, please, Chair. And with regard to the meeting on, I believe, was August the 29th, the Asset Management Group meeting. Could I please be informed, or clarification, please, if 6.2 on page 43 was adhered to and members were informed prior to this Asset Management Group taking place, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Could I hand that over to the officers, please? Or is it to Grant?
Yes, it would be to Grant.
Thank you, Sarah. Grant, would you like to respond to that, please?
Sorry, I've been in technical difficulties. Can you repeat, please?
Hello, Grant.
Jim, can
Hello,
you come
Grant.
back in? Sorry.
Hello, Grant.
Hello,
Can you hear me okay?
I can now.
No?
Yes, I've got you.
You hear me okay now, please?
Yeah, can you hear
Jim,
me?
can you hear? Jim,
Yep.
can you hear me?
I'm waiting to hear from Grant. I believe I've got him connected now. Hello,
Oh,
Grant.
brilliant. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Grant.
Councillor
Grant,
Clifton, can you repeat your question?
I'm just about to, please. Thank you. It's regarding the joint disposal and acquisitions policy, please, Grant. I believe before the August the 29th Asset Management Group, that local members should have been informed. On page 43, 6.2, it states that early notification before the AGM should be given to ensure local members are aware of the intent to dispose of the site, etc. And it's really critical, speaking to the members or listening to their reports, etc. It appears that they didn't receive this notification prior to the Asset Management Group taking place on the 29th of August. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, thank you for that. Yeah, so section 6 on page 43 deals with site investigations. So the reason for that notification is to make local members aware that there'll be some site investigations being undertaken. A simple land sale, we don't do site investigations. Therefore, that clause or that paragraph wasn't used.
If I could come back then, please, Chair.
Jim, I lost contact then. Yes, you certainly can.
Well, this is in the joint disposal acquisition policy, Chair. And obviously, this is getting close when they're having the Asset Management Group meeting that obviously they're looking to dispose of the site. This is where it's critical that I feel members should have been informed, because obviously now we're coming to that part of the process. It's really most important that members are informed that this site or this AGM will be taking place with regard to this site being disposed of, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Grant, would you like to come in on that?
No, it's
I just wondered if you wanted to reply to anything on that.
no, only to say that as I said originally, this process has been going on since 2017. So there's no secrecy surrounding the fact that the developer's been trying to buy the land, and there's no secrecy surrounding the fact that he's put a planning application in, and that if he's successful, that he will want to purchase the land from the council, and that we'll be seeking to gain views on whether to do that, whether to sell or not. So, you know, I think the principle and the objectives of the asset management, the disposal and acquisition policy have been met, because all members knew what was going on around them, and it was even reported at various meetings around certainly at Glatwell Parish Council.
Thank you.
Could I come back, please, Chair?
Yes, yes, Jim.
Yep. I'm not talking about secrecy here, Chair, or anything like that. That's not the point of the question, Chair. The point of the question is, have we followed the joint disposal acquisition policy? And it appears to me that if the members were not informed prior to the asset management group taking place, then we've not adhered to our policy, Chair. That's where I'm coming from. It's got nothing to do with secrecy. Thank you.
Grant, are you coming back in on this again, please?
Apologies, Chair. Sarah Sternberg has indicated her wish to speak, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah.
In terms of process, can I remind members that this is a period for you to debate the issues before you rather than ask questions? And secondly, can I remind you that the call-in speakers and Grant will have a right to reply at the end of this. They shouldn't be being called in on questions or as part of the debate. The members of the committee who called it in can propose motions but can't speak again because they have already spoken. Is that clear?
Yes, like mud. But thank you, yes, Sarah. I follow it through. So where do we go next then, please? Councillor Watson. James. Yeah, go on. Councillor Watson wants to come back in.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor James Watson, Pinkston Ward. So from my basis and looking at this, there seems to be enormous confusion here over the decision-making process, who the decision maker is and who the decision maker was. And I think the Director of Development is also perhaps confused himself. So therefore, with respect to the decision-making process and in line, I think by definition it cannot be applied properly. And therefore I support Councillor Kirkham's suggestion, if it becomes a motion, to refer this decision back to him. I hope, because it refers the decision back to him, and in other parts of public service, for instance, once a decision is made, then and you do it on reconsideration, you would not refer it back to the original decision maker. But I understand that this is the process in this council, and so therefore we have to conform with it. But I hope, if this resolution is passed and therefore it is referred back to Mr. Galloway to consider, that he takes full note of what's been discussed and also takes formal legal advice, basically about the definition of the land, whether it's open space or not, and whether the disposal method and basically whether that is appropriate or not, and various other matters which I've raised. And therefore I support Councillor Kirkham's point about referring this decision back.
Thank you for that.
Chair,
Sarah, yes, please come in, Sarah.
Thank you. Can I just confirm with Councillor Kirkham that you were proposing a motion? And can you please clarify the terms of the motion you were proposing?
If nobody else wants to say anything, I'm happy to put the motion forward.
And the terms of the motion are?
Okay, so we refer it back on issues of timing, proportionality, openness, transparency, all the things that James Watson's just stated in relation to open spaces, investigation, the clarification and investigation around the disposal method. And anybody else got anything to add to that list?
Chair, Councillor Tom Monroe has indicated his wish to speak.
Right, Councillor Monroe, if you'd like to come in, please. I can't hear Councillor Monroe.
My apologies. I'll start again. Councillor Tom Monroe, Whitwell Ward. I'm now speaking on the understanding, although it's not yet been clarified, we have a proposal and a seconder in the name of Councillor James Watson being the seconder and the proposer being Councillor Tom Kirkham. Am I right? Chair, am I right, Chair?
Chair,
Sarah,
could Councillors Kirkham and Watson please confirm that?
I confirm. I'm putting the motion in.
I confirm.
Right. If I may continue.
Yeah,
If I may
yes, carry
continue,
on.
Chair.
Councillor
So
Monroe.
on that basis, I will be supporting the motion on the following basis. I have received an indication during the course of the earlier questioning that some consideration will be given to talking to the original developer who has gained planning permission on the piece of land to the east of Park Avenue, Glatwell, and that serious consideration will be given to all of the correspondence received, in particular from the residents of the community in which this parcel of land is based. In particular, the fact that there is, although not a verified petition, a petition with an excess of 1,000 signatories, and that I believe that we as a council have an overriding responsibility to ensure that our actions do take into account the considerations of local people, in addition to the local members who represent them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Monroe. Sarah, back to you.
Chair, it's for the members to debate, so it's over to the members.
Right. Do any other members wish to come in and speak?
Chair, at the moment, we have no indications of wishes to speak. Councillor Graham Parkin has indicated he would like to speak.
Right, Graham, come in, please. Sorry, Councillor Parkin.
Just something that's come through. I've been thinking about it for quite a while I've been listening to everybody, and I agree with what everybody said. But wouldn't this strip of land come under the public right of way for usage? I mean, it's been used for years and years and years for the same purpose. Would this not become a public right of way?
Councillor David Dixon has indicated his wish to speak.
Do we need to get a reply from legal to Councillor Parkin's question first?
As far as I'm aware, and I haven't looked at it personally, but as far as I'm aware, it is not a registered right of way, a registered footpath, etc.
Thank you for that. Graham, did you want to respond to that?
No, I'm quite happy with that. It was just something that came to me, and I just thought I better ask the question before we go any further.
Thank you. Councillor Monroe, did you want to come back in? Somebody indicated, I'm sure.
Councillor David Dixon, Chair.
Sorry, apologies for that. Councillor Dixon, would you like to come in, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just what appears throughout this is that this whole process seems to be lacking in terms of consulting with the local residents. They seem to have, been bypassed on this, and I think this whole process of acquisition needs to be looked at again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, can I bring you back in now?
So, Chair, if you could just confirm there are no more speakers.
Right. Does anybody else on the committee wish to make any comments or speak?
Councillor Patricia Clough has indicated that she wishes to speak, and Councillor Tom Monroe.
Right.
Could I just point out that Councillor Clough will have a right of reply, and that's when she should speak. Councillor Monroe has spoken before, but it is up to you, Chair.
Well, yeah, I will bring Councillor Clough. Shall I bring Councillor Clough in first and then Councillor Monroe?
Chair, Councillor Clough has a right to reply when all the other members have finished.
Oh, right. Right. Councillor Munro, would you like to come in then, please?
If you could just bear with me a second, I'm just getting up, if I may, Chair. I'm just getting up, just for information. I've got up the Derbyshire portal on my own screen, and I'm just trying to locate very quickly, if you will just be patient with me, Glapwell, so that I can give you some advice on the question about the right-of-way on the footpath. And I now have in front of me the right-of-way map, and it quite clearly shows that there is no right-of-way, and this is just a piece of factual information, across the Ransom Strip about which we are today talking. The right-of-way, which is Glapwell footpath number 4, goes to the north of the housing on the north side of Park Avenue and comes out on the bend on Bolsover Road at that point. It does not go across the Ransom Strip. Just a piece of factual information, Chair. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Munro, for that clarification on that. Sarah, who do we go to next, or Joanne, whichever one of us?
Chair,
Have we
there are
got
no further members no members have indicated they wish to speak further.
Right.
So, Chair, we're moving to the rights of reply. It's a question of whether Councillor Clough and Galloway want a few minutes to put together their closing statements, or whether they wish to proceed straight away.
Any indication from...
I'm happy to proceed.
Thank you, Grant.
Councillor Clough?
Clough? Councillor Clough?
Yes, I'm happy to proceed.
Right.
Thank you.
In which case, Chair, Grant Galloway goes first.
Thank you. Grant, if you'd like to start your presentation first, please.
Okay, okay, I'll be very brief. So the land, the sale of land is in line with council policy. Assessed at market value in line with the overriding duty of the council under section 123 of the Local Government Act 1972, which is to obtain best consideration reasonably obtained through land disposal. The views of all parties for and against have been taken into account and assessed against the benefit to the district in selling the land at market value. Decision-making process has not been rushed. It's been advertised through the proper process on the member portal, and the delegated powers are in place there to ensure that the decision is enacted, which was subsequently sent to members for them to review the process. So I believe the DD process is fully transparent.
Right, thank you for that, Grant. So, Councillor Clough, would you like to come in now?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Director, Mr. Galloway, said that people were suggesting secrecy. Now, as an open and transparent council, we have processes and procedures to ensure that there is no secrecy. And I think it's become apparent this morning that we just haven't followed the procedures. I'll just give you one example. The future purchaser, if it goes ahead, approached Mr. Galloway on the 28th of February, and I reiterate, I haven't received either informal or formal consultation, and I know that Councillor Tom Kirkham hasn't either. So we really do have to make sure that this decision is put back, and I concur with Councillor Kirkham's proposal. I would actually like to state, because I know a lot of them will be online, I would like to thank the residents of Glapwell, and in particular the residents of Park Avenue. With social distancing, I have met with a lot of them in the open air, in wet weather and in sunny weather. I didn't stay in my car. And I'd like to thank those councillors who came to Park Avenue also to meet with the residents. I just want to finish on the CLES, the National Organisation for Local Economies, is quite clear. Going forward, they say, we must reform our economy to one which tackles the climate emergency and builds social injustice. If this sale goes ahead, we will be taking down some trees which are quite healthy, which is contrary to what we should be doing in the current climate emergency. And also, by the sale going ahead, we will be building a social injustice to all those residents in Glatwell, and not just Glatwell, the far-reaching district. Over 3,000 people attend the Glatwell fair, and that will have to cease if this piece of land is sold. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Joanne, where are we next, please?
Thank you, Chair. Oh, apologies. So if members are satisfied that they are happy to go ahead with Councillor Kirkham's motion, we need to move to a vote on that. I don't know if anybody's got a detailed list of what the motion was, to just reiterate that before we vote. Do we want to restate?
Yeah, would you clarify, please?
Donna,
Okay.
are you wanting to come in?
Yeah,
So-
Chair, it's Donna Cairns, I'm the clerk to the committee. If it would be helpful, Chair, I can summarise the points that have been made by members in presenting the motion, and then if they wish to confirm if that's accurate or wish to alter any of the things that I've said, would that be helpful?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Committee?
So the motion, as I've recorded it from Councillor Kirkham, is to refer this decision back to Grant Galloway as the decision maker to reconsider, with the issues of concerns as follows. The first being the timing and use of the delegated decision as an emergency power, and if that was a proportionate use of that power at this time. The second issue is openness and transparency in the consultation with members, and to ask for further consultation to take place. Third is to request that that Mr. Galloway takes further legal advice in relation to whether or not the site is open space, and to clarify the appropriate or method in line with the policy.
Right, thank you for that.
The other matter referred to by Councillor Watson was regarding that legal advice. I think that's captioned in what I've summarised.
I've got any more questions on? If not, we will move to a vote, won't we, next?
I'll
Yes,
move
Chair.
a vote to be taken now.
Thank you, Mr. Councillor Munro. Have I got a seconder for that?
Councillor Chair, Nikki Calvert will take us through the vote now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As we're moving to the vote, just to advise members that we'll be doing this by roll call. So this is similar to as we would be doing in the chamber if we were going to take a recorded vote. However, this won't be recorded as a recorded vote in the minutes. However, of course, this is live stream, so the public will be seeing which vote you make. So I'll call your name in alphabetical turn. If you could indicate by turning on your microphone at that time and say for, against, or abstain. Councillor Derek Adams.
For.
Councillor Jim Clifton.
For.
Councillor Patricia Clough.
For.
Councillor David Dixon.
For.
Councillor Christopher Kane.
Against.
Councillor Tom Kirkham.
For.
Councillor Tom Monroe,
4,
Councillor Graham Parkin,
4,
Councillor Peter Roberts,
4,
Councillor James Watson,
4,
and Councillor Jen Wilson.
4.
That's 9 votes for, 1 against.
Right, thank you everybody for that voting. I can I bring you back in, Sarah?
Yes, Chair, the motion was voted for, so it's been passed.
Thank you. And can I be put back through the scrutiny officer now, please?
Chair, if I may, rather than Joe Wilson and Donna Cairns, the clerk to the committee, if I can just confirm for committee, as a result of that vote, what will now take place.
Yes,
so you've agreed
please.
to refer the matter back to Grant Galloway. The resolution will be recorded and that will be provided to Grant in writing to request that he review the decision. He may now take any further action he considers necessary, taking into account the concerns that you've raised before reaching a final decision. So he may still make the same decision or a different one. It is still up to him to make that decision. The decision from members today will be published with the results of this committee, and Grant's final decision, when made, will also be published and circulated to members. There's no time frame in which he must make that decision, but if he does advise us of any time frame, we'll obviously notify you of that in due course.
Right, thank you.
And that's the conclusion of the meeting, Chair.
Right, so shall I officially close this meeting?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
That's fine, and it's 12:03. We are closing the meeting of the Growth Scrutiny. And thank you for everybody attending the meeting for us.